Now we'll start seeing people pop in. And welcome people. Ding, 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 ding.
All right, so panelists, Jessica's letting folks into the Zoom session. You'll see the participant count grow in the bottom session. You'll see sort of a surge at the beginning and then another surge as we get close to 6:15. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Ask any questions you want of the attendees that are already in the Zoom session as well. They may have some things that they want you to cover or address tonight. So this is our informal mingling phase. So Jessica, is that your place in Santa Fe, by the way?
It is. Yeah, well, there's like kid art on the wall right there. So I picked the more Santa Fe art and not the kid art.
Got it.
Maybe. Hi, Robert. Robert's already raising his hand. Hi, Eric Pearson. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited. Lots of people are raising their hands. And it's not always sure if people realize when they're raising their hands when they're in Zoom. If you're raising your hand right now, feel free to put your comment in the webinar chat function and let us know what your question is. Let us know where you're from, what you're working on right now. And actually, one of the questions that I would be interested in knowing is, before our panelists begin to speak, if you have any questions about the topics, we'll do a formal Q&A. But if people want to share their questions in the chat, share just sort of what brought them here, what they're curious about in the chat function right now, we'd love to hear that. So where you're from, what you're working on. We got Austin and Wimberley represented.
As you type things in the chat window, feel free to send them to all panelists and attendees. I see some coming just to the panelists, so I love getting to see them, but you can share it with all attendees as well. And I see Vanessa's on. Hi, Vanessa, and Janine. Miss seeing y'all in person.
Hi. I know, me too.
Yes, and Michael, I got your question in here. Absolutely. Yeah. So. I am going to rearrange these four right there. All right. So I love seeing where people are typing that they're in from. I see someone from Tennessee, tuning in from Tennessee. All right.
Yeah.
Folks, please feel free to share where you're connecting from. As everybody probably knows, the Austin Forum spent 14 years being this event that I created to pull people out from behind their computer screens and make them meet and network and learn in person. And then the pandemic struck. So 14 years of that, and that all went out the window. We've made a great transition to Zoom, and it's allowed us to do some things a little different. And in particular, have people from Denver. Thanks for joining us, Zoe.
Welcome. People from Chicago.
Multiple from Chicago.
Really? Yes. Love Chicago. My family.
We got some good questions already.
Yeah, this is great. Oh, hello, Kristen. Kristen sounds familiar. Vanessa's all over the place.
I remember, yeah. So where are the panelists? Where are y'all actually originally from? I'm Richmond, Virginia.
I'm originally from Cameroon in Central Africa, but I've been in the US for 8.5 years.
Wow, Cameroon, all right.
I'm from Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, but 10 minutes across the bridge. And then I moved here 2 years ago.
Not far from me. A lot of my friends are from Northern Virginia.
Oh,
I went to University of Virginia undergrad, which
okay.
pretty much should have been the University of Northern Virginia, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people went to UVA. So I went to Longwood University. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Farmville area. Yes, that's where I went for undergrad.
Great. Michael, I don't even know where you're from originally. You told me once when I came to your office.
Oh, come on. 305.
I can't remember.
Miami.
Right? Miami. I remember. Miami.
Yeah, there it is.
I was right. Because we talked Cuban style salsa. I was all like, oh, that's Miami.
Miami, born and raised, background Jamaican.
Nice.
So I'm from Oceanside, California, and married a military man. So spent a long time. West Coast. Spent a long time in Alaska. So
you too. Okay. I lived in San Diego for 5.5 years, and I spent a short time in Alaska, all of which was cold. It was about 1.5 years in Fairbanks.
See, that's where I was. I lived in Fairbanks for about 7 years, and loved it.
What years were you there?
Golly, I was there from 2004 on.
Okay, I was there in a little older than you. I was there before that. I remember August 94 to January of 96.
Okay. Yep. And we drove to Texas. So.
How long was that drive?
Oh, it was days. I mean, you have to take the ferry, right? It was days. But you know, it was a great trip because we got to come all the way down the coast, and we, you know, our kids were young, so we were able to expose them to all the colleges down the coast, and you know, from there, now my son is at San Diego State because we stopped at San Diego State on that trip. So.
That's wonderful.
Mimi, I left there in January from Fairbanks. As you can imagine, it was cold.
Yeah.
I think the weather sign out in front of the bank on the way to the little airport said -21. So not the coldest day, just -21. And
now, Jay, you know how we have to talk when we're from Alaska. You have to say 21 below, right?
That's right. You are right. 21 below. I've been gone a long time. And I was moving to San Diego, and I was so ready to get back around palm trees and things that I upgraded myself to first class for a one-way flight. I said, I'm going to be rested when I get there. Of course, I got to San Diego, and it was an incredibly cold day for San Diego. I go into a restaurant, and a person says, how about this cold weather we're having? And I said, well, it's about 75 degrees warmer than where I started the day. So still okay.
Oh yeah, I miss it. I miss it up there.
Yeah, I live coastal.
We got people coming in from all over.
Yeah.
Got Seattle in here. We got local Austinites like myself showing up. Hey, Andre. Austin Technology Incubator showing up. Hi, welcome everybody. Originally from Lebanon. My prayers to Lebanon right now, Rania. Sending lots of love and prayers to Lebanon. Hello, welcome.
Hey, Sandy, thanks for joining us. I see a lot of familiar names on here. We have a lot of returning folks on the call. That's great. For everybody on the call that is not familiar with the Austin Forum, we start our events formally at 6:15. So this is just sort of open mingling, typing things in the chat window, speakers talking among themselves, reading your chat comments, getting ideas for some things that they may say. And we encourage all of you to share where you're connecting from. One of the advantages of switching to this format has we've been able to reach a much more diverse geographically audience. So we really like seeing where you're calling in from.
Yeah, we really encourage people to interact and get to connect via the Zoom chat, and we'll ask questions on that. If you have questions directed towards our panelists, please include them in the Q&A. They'll be asking questions and dialoguing amongst themselves, and then at the end, our guest moderator will be asking questions from the Q&A, and then even at the very, very end, after the official event, we'll have some more opportunity for you guys to get to sort of come on screen and dialogue. So please, so the options are you can chat it up in the chat feature, you can ask questions via the Q&A, and our moderator at the end will pick some of the best, will sort of cull the questions from there, and then our panelists will also be dialoguing and asking questions to each other. So, we've got some great Entrepreneurs Foundation coming in, fantastic.
And as Jessica said, if your question doesn't get chosen, don't despair. We're going to do extended Q&A after we close the formal part of the meeting at 7:30. We then give everybody a chance to go fill up the whiskey cup or whatever, couple minutes break, and then we start with extended Q&A. And during that part, Jessica will promote any questioners to live to ask the question live during that part.
Yeah, like Donna just messaged the panelists about being a professor at UNCW, coordinating the ed doctorate program and master's on critical race theory and curriculum for equity. So definitely stick around, and we'll have you chat up with our panelists at the very end too. if you have any questions, Anna. Picking you already.
All right, we're at 6:15.
We're big slalom fans.
We're at 6:15, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing, and we'll open the formal meeting. So, let's,
Maria, I agree. Powerhouse orgs in the house.
Jessica, are the slides showing up?
They are. I see them.
All right. Then let's go ahead and get the meeting started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the Austin Forum on Technology and Society on Zoom. For the longtime fans of the Austin Forum, we always did these meetings in person. Thanks to our own Vanessa Burnett, we also streamed them, but the real focus was on that in-person gathering of people to foster those relationships. With the pandemic, we not only shifted some of our programming to be about COVID, but we shifted our format as well to be Zoom. So we're really happy to have you all joining us here, and we're very pleased with the embracing of using this. We know you've all been on Zoom multiple times today probably, or Microsoft Teams or Skype or something. So thanks for joining us for one more session today. We really appreciate it. We have a great event for you tonight. It's about using data and technology to improve our racial climate. We have 4 community leaders that are on this presentation tonight. And it's not really a presentation tonight, it's more of a conversation about this topic. So we just have a few slides at the beginning, and then we will turn it over to our speakers. And I'll introduce them all shortly, but I want to also remind you that 2 weeks from tonight, we have a related event, Achieving Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Tech. Now, as you can tell, these 2 events are related. Tonight's focus, its conversational focus, is going to be more about how data, technology, and analytics can help shine a light on the problems and can potentially lead to problems, but hopefully how data, technology, and analytics can lead to some solutions. In 2 weeks, we shift to what your own technology companies and organizations and nonprofits can do to help promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech, whether it be in education or hiring and recruiting, in staff development, in promoting, in funding minority-owned businesses. So that please join us again for that related event. I've invited all of the tonight's speakers to join us for the extended Q&A panel at the next event, and I've invited those speakers to join for tonight. With that, I want to make sure and thank our annual partners that make this possible. We have 15 great annual partners that believe in the mission of the Austin Forum on Technology and Society. You can see a range of companies and organizations in here. There are some global technology giants on our annual partners list, and there are some small Austin companies that believe in the Austin community and the importance of technology and its influence in society. So many thanks to all of these partners who make it possible to do this.
We also have an amazing, we also have an amazing advisory board made up of these brilliant, committed, and good-looking community leaders, one of whom is on our panel tonight, Michael Ward Jr. These are the thought leaders and the guides and our partners in making the Austin Forum possible, helping us expand our reach, helping us choose our content, and so we're incredibly thankful for their support and service on our board.
As we said, these events are really about bringing people together. It used to be in person, now it's online, but the focus is still to encourage you to connect, collaborate, and contribute. It's a little harder, we realize, to connect with each other online, but you'll see people typing things in the chat window all night. And there may be people there that you want to then respond to privately, perhaps, to say, hey, let's have a business meeting set up to talk about that topic. So we encourage you to connect with each other via comments in the chat window tonight. As you know, we have the informal mingling for the doors open phase from 6 to 6:15. The main event will go till 7:30. We will have sort of a formal close at 7:30. We used to do networking after that. It'll be extended Q&A with our panel tonight. On the August 18th event, we're going to experiment with breakout groups and see how that works for an organization of our size and scale. But tonight it'll be extended networking.
So we know that there's been a lot going on lately and a lot of huge shifts but I want to hear from people. So you're going to put it all in the chat feature right now that everybody's already saying hello and greeting each other. What is a positive sign of social progress that you have seen, lately? So what is something that you've seen? There's been a lot of change. I hope to think for the positive. So what is something that you've seen? So type it out on the chat feature and press send, and we want to see what everybody has to say. Colorado eliminated the police immunity. Absolutely, that's a huge thing. There's been a lot of support and solidarity. White men educating themselves on anti-racism, also incredibly important, Stephen. Awareness of the systemic racism, increased empathy, support for Black Lives Matter increasing across the country, honest conversations, white friends talking about how to be anti-racist. A number of people showing up at events like this, absolutely. So we'd love to keep seeing those, like what are the things that we are seeing happen? Big push for companies to diversify. UT is making itself more inclusive. Conversations with the Black Man series on YouTube. I'll have to check that out, Janine. People trying to be more vocal about this. Yeah, huge things. Hi, Roy. Hey, Craig. So we also have a lot of great content available. The Austin Forum Upload, we have a blog, we have a podcast. We're about to launch season 3. So please check it out. You can get to it online from our Austin Forum website, our Austin Forum podcast, the AF Upload, and the AF Update on Medium. Both of which, especially our blog, people can contribute just like you.
We also want to encourage you to join us on Slack. We started the Slack workspace a while ago, but we're starting to ramp it up now, and more people are starting to connect on there. It's a place where you can connect individually to other members, where you can post questions that Jessica and I will answer, or try to get other experts to answer. So we hope you'll join us on the Slack space.
We also have a new opportunities channel on our Slack space we have a lot of people looking for mentorship, looking for jobs, posting about jobs. So we have a new channel within our Slack workspace that we'd love for you guys to check out as well. So, and then please share this with everybody. Please tweet hashtag EqualityAF or tag us at Austin Forum. And as we said, if you have questions for the speakers, I see a few coming in already. Please use the Q&A in the Zoom client. So in the Q&A function, if you want questions for the speakers that we'll pick from at the end of the event. And now our featured presentation. Please ask questions via Zoom Q&A button. Please be respectful of our speakers and audience. Share key points via Twitter using our hashtag and handle, hashtag EqualityAF at the Austin Forum. And more than anything, please learn, think, and enjoy. Welcome.
And so with that, we're into the main portion of our event for tonight. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. It's great to see a big crowd for this important topic. Tonight's topic is using data and technology to improve our racial climate. I am very pleased to welcome to the panel today, Eunice Chenju of Open Teams, Janice Omadeki from the Mentor Method, Mimi Stiles from Measure Austin, returning speaker to the Austin Forum, and Michael Ward Jr. from the Austin Urban Technology Movement and one of our advisory board members. So I will turn it over to the panel so that they can give a little bit on their bios before we jump right into it. So gang, you want to do that? Eunice, you're up first.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Eunice Chenju, and I'm one of the co-founders and VP of partners at Open Teams. Open Teams is a B2B marketplace for open source services and support. If you didn't know, open source is being used by over 99% of companies today, and it's a growing market. However, it is really difficult to find services and support around open source projects used across the globe. So Open Teams is providing a solution for that problem. I have been in the data science and machine learning industry for about 4 years now, and I'm really excited to join the panelists today.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Omadeki. I'm CEO and founder of the Mentor Method. We're an enterprise platform that helps companies keep and develop their underrepresented talent using the proven power of mentorship. So a simple way of thinking about what we do is equating us to online dating, where you put in your interests and what you want out of your future, But if you peek under the hood, we've developed a patent pending algorithm that's chemistry focused so that you're matched to the right person, and companies can spend more time developing their underrepresented professionals instead of scrambling to make the best mentor matches. This is an important topic to me as data is critical to the work of the mentor method and also a great way of showing why change is important. And being able to use technology and data in one cohesive package, to me, is one component to creating long-lasting change. So very excited to discuss this in various aspects this evening.
And Michael. Oh, no, Mimi. Sorry, Mimi.
Yeah.
Mimi's next.
Great. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Mimi Stiles. I get to be the president and the founder of Measure. We are formerly known as Measure Austin, but now we're just Measure. And we are a group of just amazing data activists that believe in people of color owning their own data narratives. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, but you know what our main priority now is to provide data and evaluation support to other Black and Brown nonprofits. What we've realized is that there's so many Black and Brown nonprofits that are doing amazing work, but just may need to know how to create KPIs, key performance indicators, or just may need, the support in order to come up with the theory of change or to understand how to draw down data in order to prove their concepts. So that's really what we do. We also have a series of award-winning initiatives like the Innocence Initiative, where we are quite literally protecting Black girls in Central Texas, and also the Big Data, and now what it's going to be called Big Data and Public Safety Conference, which we've done nationally so far. So just again, excited to have a very real conversation because I'm quite tired of having kind of cookie cutter conversations, especially about this, and at such an important time as this. It's time to get real. So hopefully y'all are ready to get real with me.
I mean, is there any other way to live?
All right. I hear that.
So I'm not sure if everybody saw the comment that I put in there that said this is a rock star panel, and I definitely need that because I'm honored to be here with these beautiful Black women that are here today. But my name is Michael Wood Jr. I'm the president and CEO of AUTM, which is Austin Urban Technology Movement, and we connect the Black and Hispanic community with the tech industry. So we do job placements, career development, and networking opportunities. And what I've realized being in this space for going on 5 years now, and in this space, I mean specifically Austin in this space, is that now digital equity has become a digital currency. So if you do not have access to devices, to the internet, to any type of technology, well, you are more likely to be impoverished. And we could get into that as we have these conversations. But from our standpoint, we realize that right now, we really need to rethink about having access to the tech industry and what that really means. And I see I need to fix my sound, so I'll make sure I get that worked out before we do that.
So while Michael's fixing his sound, I'm going to go to Mimi's first slide and then come back to Michael. So Mimi, did you want to talk about this slide before Michael does some of those data overview slides?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I hope you guys are ready to get real about this, right? So, so I had to kind of come up with this concept of what's happening, right? Like right now. And so I came up with this slide, why it's urgent that we undo technological racism. And just to show in my mind why it's creating harm and why it's literally creating harm to people. And so the truth behind technological racism, it's complex, it's perverse, it's opportunistic, right? It has the potential, or rather is and already really creating this new caste system where your name or your zip code or the color of your skin, if detected, can predict your place in society. There's countless ways in which this happens, right? Or happened or is happening right now, like as we speak, that we're going to really get into tonight. I can't wait to hear the other panelists and their perspectives on it, but I'd like to just kind of quickly share with you just a few examples of what I see and see what I, kind of like determining these automated inequalities. And then I'd also like to ask you all some questions. So I want it to be kind of like active as I'm kind of going through this to spark your deeper understanding. And some of these questions are kind of like, oh, seriously, Mimi, like you're gonna ask us that? But like literally, yes, I'm asking you these questions, and inside of the chat, please answer them dig a little bit deeper, and you'll understand why in a minute. So first off is roots, right? So first we have to acknowledge, all of us have to acknowledge that African roots are deeply, deeply embedded in math, science, technology. In fact, even the system of just counting that we know of today was innovated and developed in the motherland, right? When we fail to recognize our roots, we fail to even recognize the contributions of even the more recent innovators, mathematicians, tech geniuses like Katherine Johnson, right? The Black woman who literally sent the first man to the moon, and only just recently, a couple of years ago, received the credit for even doing so. And so my question to the audience, and just for 2 seconds, how long must we remain hidden? How long must we remain hidden? I know that's a kind of, out there, right? But how long do people that look like me, Janice, Eunice, Michael, who have these contributions literally in our DNA, how long must we remain hidden? And so if you want to just answer that in the chat while I continue to go, it's not an easy question, right? Answer that in the chat. I appreciate you, Roy. And so as you're answering and thinking about that, then let's kind of go to access, right? Probably one of the most prevalent forms of oppression and suppression in our modern time, especially at a time where a lack of technology covered with race, covered with a pandemic, could quite literally determine, if you can get a loan, if you are able to receive an education, or if you're locked up in jail and can't get out, right? And I say that because we just saw the reality of a 15-year-old girl in Michigan who failed to do her homework online, was on probation, failed to do her homework online, and was sentenced and went to jail because of it. So my question about access, right, is should access be a human right if it can actually get you incarcerated if you don't have it, right? So like when we think about free net and things like that, like how much should access be free? Is data, should Wi-Fi actually be a freely given? And so I have obviously my own thoughts to that, but is it truly the new utility? And so the next piece is harm, and I'll kind of quickly go through this question, right? So Black and brown people have faced automated harm for so long, y'all, right? And so there's this book that I absolutely love. Matter of fact, I have it right here so that you can see. It's called The Race After Technology by Ruha Benjamin. And she takes note for the new Jim Crow and calls for the process of technological oppression the new Jim Code. So harm is perpetuated in so many ways, from racist algorithms that determine if you're a gang member or not, your risk for criminalization, to your name being too Black for a particular job, right? So who, the question is, you know, and please answer this in the chat. So who are we harming through our innovation, and do we even really care? Right? So who are we harming through our innovation, and do we even care? I got to be honest about this one. I go by Mimi because people thought my name was too Black and it was too hard to say. So I just now naturally go by Mimi. I grew up Jamila Christiana Taliaferro, okay? Let's be real, right? And so lastly is, and thanks Diane for that, lastly is illumination. And so I'm gonna have a series of questions right here, right? So technology has created a very solid case of discrimination and oppression. And so unfortunately, and this drives me absolutely nuts all the time, being a person that's in data, that loves data, that likes analysis, that, you know, just I'm a nerd, right? It's sexy to me. And so what's harming us is also illuminating this possibility of radical change, right? But my question, are we too late? Are we too late? How deep must we dig, and how much more reimagining, how many more laps around the racetrack must Black folk run now to catch the new Jim Code to fight back, right? We did a lot, we've been doing that. And so this is just another thing, it's another system that we're now trying to uproot and untangle and understand, right? But how many more Shirley Chisholms, how many more Rosa Parks, how many more Malcolm X's, how many more Martin Luther Kings, how many more John Lewis's do we need to actually erect and lose, you know, but against this fight against big data? How many more data revolutionaries, data activists do we need to grow and develop before we see algorithmic freedom? And so these are just some questions that I always have, I know for myself and the work that we do at Measure. And I know that some of them are like out there, right? But these are questions that I hope that people that are in the tech industry, folks like you guys right now, really take hold to. So every single time you're sitting at your desk creating new code, or every single time you're dreaming up at 3 a.m. a new software that's going to change the world, think about how it's going to change the world and who it might impact. So I hope that helps frame some of the conversation that's going to happen here, Mike.
Yeah, and I would say that's a good segue into the next slide.
Okay, cool.
The next slide for me, Jay. So everything that Mimi said, 100% agree with it. And when I think through what are
You went on mute, Michael.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So when we think about, well, what are some of the challenges or some of the issues that kind of happened over the years, right? Everything that Mimi said is 100% right. And we are not going to solve this over time. I mean, we're not going to solve this overnight. This is something that we need to look back and actually course correct a lot of the policies, practices, initiatives that have been created ever since slavery. Right. So now we're going to go through some stats just to kind of set the mood and really combine what Mimi said to some actual data that we're seeing. So overall, this just breaks down based on the 2010 numbers of the census data. So we see whites predominantly 63%. We have blacks close to 12%, Hispanics, 16.4. Then we have Asians, other, and et cetera. And when we look at the overall population, then we look at the individuals that actually have a bachelor's degree by the age of 25, we see that Asians are at the top. We see that whites are in the middle right now compared to this data chart. Then we have blacks and Hispanics at the bottom. And when I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, well, when did we first create this class system? And what I mean by this class system is this racial class where, you know, whites are at the top and then everyone else is at the bottom. When we think about America here today, we definitely see a huge percentage of individuals in the tech industry being those that are white and Asian. Definitely some stereotypes there for sure. But when we think about the Blacks and Hispanic community, there's a lack of representation in that. And so the question is, okay, well, how much is education combined to the lack of opportunities that we're seeing in our areas? And education, I don't want you to think about the typical brick and mortar. I just want you to think about overall just learning. How much have we restricted learning, or how have we limited what individuals are able to have access to, which now dictates whether or not they're successful? Because based on our current workforce system today, if you do not have a bachelor's degree, well, you are most likely not going to make more than someone who does have a bachelor's degree. So a bachelor's degree now has become, in my opinion, a barrier to entry in some of the industries that we're seeing. Now, because of COVID, now because of economic injustice, and more people now are actually trying to reimagine education, trying to reimagine what workforce development looks like. But they're doing that now because they realize, oh, wait a minute. There's been a huge group of individuals that did not have who do not have the opportunity to really get an education. And then if we compare the trends of those that do not have a bachelor's degree by the age of 25, which this new slide here that's showing the unemployment rate, look how Blacks are once again at the top. We have Hispanics that are, you know, right there in the middle. We have whites and we have Asians. When we look at these trends from unemployment rates, you know, Blacks are always at the bottom in this sense, but at the top in the sense of how many individuals are actually being unemployed. That's a huge percent of the population that do not have access to get education, and now they're also being unemployed. Next slide for me, Jay. Is it gonna change? Is it gonna change? There it goes, perfect.
The right side.
Perfect, and now we think about the income levels, right? So from a lot of the work that I do, so Autumn, we're all about connecting the Black and Hispanic community with the tech industry. The reason why we focus on the tech industry is Austin, quote unquote, says it's a tech hub. The tech industry, once you get in, you make the average salary is over $75,000. Once you transition inside the tech industry, well, now there's a lot of other barriers or challenges you do not have to worry about because you are economically stable. You are able to be self-sustaining once you transition to the tech industry. There's definitely a lot of jobs within that from various different technical and non-technical roles. However, when you think about the lack of opportunities to education, the employment levels, and then where income falls in between that, you see a direct correlation with how America has set up their success system. So you get a college degree. Once you get a college degree, now you start making enough income so you're not unemployed. However, what if you do not have access to education, which is very similar to what happens if you don't have access to technology? What if you don't have access to the internet? What if you don't have access to mentors, right? So now, if you start removing a lot of the foundation and the support that was given to a certain population of the community, what you're doing is you are providing a huge gap within the have and the have-nots. And I'm not going to talk about the entire world. I'm going to focus on Austin for right now, because here in Austin, we have the largest racial wealth divides in America. Between whites and Asians would make above $73,000 in median income level, but you have Blacks and Hispanics making less than $44,000 in median income level. So roughly a $25,000 gap between the Blacks and Hispanics and the whites and Asians. So just pause on that for a second, because when we think about that number, we think about the racial wealth divide, and then we realize the lack of education in our communities. We think about the lack of access to technology in our communities. Well, no wonder we see the negative trends that we're seeing today, because a lot of the foundation that was given to predominantly the white community wasn't spread across for everyone. Is the same thing happened when the housing market was booming back in the day, when individuals were moving to California because of the gold rush? There was only so many individuals that were able to benefit from that, while a whole group of individuals were left behind. And when I think about COVID right now, we have forced some businesses to close. You know, some businesses have completely closed shop because they were not able to have to stay in business or be able to still be alive given 4 months, 5 months of closure, right? So some businesses are completely have been eradicated. Not predominantly, but the highest population have been Black businesses. When you think about the fact that now students need to automatically have internet access at their house, have access to devices, and know exactly how to use it. It's like, wait a minute, time out. We never prepared these communities or these children or these students to actually go down that pathway, but yet we automatically expect them and their family to provide for them. Not everyone has that privilege. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we've had in our society is that we have not put ourselves in other people's shoes and actually think from an equity lens. So an equity lens doesn't mean, oh, I give everyone access and there you go. No. You have to rethink about, okay, well, what are some of the challenges and barriers that prevent this person from being successful in this space as it pertains to their peer, as it pertains to their counterpart? So what are some other things that we need to do to make sure that we can overcome those challenges? And if we do not do that, we have what we see today, where certain students are able to have online working right now or continue their education online, but other students cannot. And those students that cannot, those parents are thinking about their children being left behind. They're saying, how am I going to be able to work and also take care of my child? But if I was financially okay, well, maybe I could hire a nanny, maybe I could get a tutor, maybe I could do homeschooling, maybe I could do a lot of other things that if I had the financial means, I was able to do so. But when we think about technology and how that can be an equalizer, that's why I'm so excited for the future, right? You know, Mimi was asking, you know, how longer or how much longer until we actually provide real opportunities? How much longer till we change the trends? And with the conversation and the climate that we're seeing, is that I do have hope because technology can really streamline a lot of these things. Of course, we need to not just, you know, give people technology and think that's going to be the end all be all, but we have to put a real strategy in place and invest in our technology and then teach people how to use that. Because if we do not, then we're just going to continue to divide ourselves between those that have and those that have not. And this is not just for the Black and Hispanic community, even though I'm a big believer those are definitely disproportionately impacted, but also the rural communities, right? Think about those areas that don't have access at all to either internet, to doctors, to jobs, to businesses. So now, as we can see, is that this issue is not just targeting the Black and Hispanic community, but it's really targeting those that are low income, underserved, and underrepresented. And in order for us to really see change, we need to, number one, be more inclusive with the types of policies and initiatives that we're having. We need to bring the right people to the table. So if we're trying to help those that are low income, underserved, and underrepresented, well, we need to make sure they're at the table helping create the strategy and the plans in order to make that happen. And we've been going down this path for too long without creating a real solution with everyone in mind. Because if we were doing that, well, we wouldn't be having these trends since 1988. Look at that, 1988. And we're still seeing the same exact numbers. We're still seeing the same class systems, whites and Asians on top, Blacks and Hispanics at the bottom. We need to change that and really invest in ways to create long-term strategy, not just a short-term fix. So I completely agree with Mimi. I'm not looking to just talk about these problems all day. I'm not looking to have the same conversations with everyone. I'm looking to find the right partners, connect with those that are actually serious about creating new products, creating new businesses, creating new initiatives, because whatever we were doing before is not enough to actually change the trends that we want to see and completely reshape our ecosystem here. And I think that's the next slide, and I'll hand it off to Janice or for Eunice if they want to comment on anything that was said so far.
The slides went away. I'm not sure if you intended to remove it.
Okay, that was the end of the data slides there. So we were just going to have, this is where you all get the all the time for conversation. We have some backup slides that I'll bring up if you all hit those points in there as well, but this was our conversation part.
Sure. So I'll propose a question overall to my fellow panelists. When we think about, leveraging data, and we could go all over the place with this question. When we think about leveraging data, based on your viewpoint, based on what you're seeing, what is the number one, number two thing that we need to do to actually really have an impact and implement real change in our community?
I think that depends on what part of the community you're referring to. So when I think about that, right, especially coming from Black female tech founder focus, there's the venture side, there's education, as you beautifully articulated. I'm so glad you brought that up. And then there's also the workforce. And there are so many other components, socioeconomic, but if we distill this, the people who are here and attending understand that it's an issue. We know how to translate data to show the problems as well as the vantage points in order to create solutions to that. In my opinion, it's a matter of bringing in those that are more resistant to that change and finding ways to leverage that data to tell a compelling story that directly translates into why it's a benefit for them in a way that helps them see the bigger picture and get involved. So for example, if you work at a large tech company and you're not in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, you're not in HR, you're not connected to a P&L, but you understand that the data you're looking at shows that Black and underrepresented professionals are leaving the company at an exponentially faster rate than their straight white male counterparts, let's say. Being able to show the employer that, hey, if you put these policies in place, if you put these procedures in place, you'll actually see a better return on your investment for talent. You'll see an increase in retention, especially thinking about, let's use a CPG company, for example, being able to show that the majority shareholder of buying power right now is Black women by trillions of dollars. We spend more money than the US GDP. Like, that's an obscene amount of money that companies that aren't thinking about the data in that way are leaving money on the table. But if you're articulating it in a way that shows how much money that company could actually generate by including their Black and underrepresented professionals in the conversations for marketing, product development, engineering, and other areas outside of just an affinity group that probably doesn't have a budget and is just getting stale cookies and coffee and no actual power within the organization, that's a better story to tell than trying to go the route of just getting an ERG. Really connected to the business, find a way to connect it to the profit and loss statements, and show that investing time, energy, resources in your underrepresented employees as well as your customers will generate the return that they're looking for.
So
I'll
then
stop. I could really keep going, but I'll stop there because I want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Oh no, we're gonna call on you, Janice. We're gonna keep
on doing this to have this going. But I would say it sounds like when we talk about data, it's how we are telling the story about what that data means to have the outcome that we want to have.
Yeah, because it's not enough to just say, for example, a stat such as woman-led private tech companies achieve 35% higher returns on investment. VCs and employers, they can Google too, right? Like, they know that information, they have that already. It's about making sure that they're bought into why it impacts them. And when you connect on that deeper level so that they're actually bought in, that's when that change happens, not just giving them a statistic or showing that you did the research.
I don't have much to add on that end. I think I come from a different perspective when it comes to data, in the sense that I like to think that a lot of the times if the data is biased, then the system will be biased as well. And a lot of the times in different sectors, we've realized how in the banking, in education, even in, as you know, in the employment sector, when people are trying to get hired, there's something that I like to think when I think of data and I think of us as people, it's called protected classes, right? So being able to understand when data looks at, you know, your sex, your race, your religion, your national origin, a lot of the times what eventually happens is, and I know this because I've studied so many data, in the sense that maybe when you go to the bank and you're maybe asking for a loan as a business owner, depending on your protected classes, you might automatically get denied. When you are potentially getting arrested, or when you commit, you know, either a minor crime or a very crazy crime, a lot of the times there are some technologies that are being used. One of them that I'm very familiar with is called Compass. And it is, which stands for Correctional Offender Management Profiling. And that is usually being used to determine if somebody that is convicted is at high risk or at low risk. And we've realized from historical data that a lot of the Black people that go through these tools are usually put in as being at higher risk than somebody that is white. And so my take when I think of technology and data and how that is affected our racial climate is that we need to be able to collect the data in the first place before using those systems, because if your data is biased, eventually your system is biased as well.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Mimi.
Yeah, I also think that it's just time now to hold, you know, hold everyone accountable to being disruptors and to being change makers at the corporate level and schools. Like, I mean, I feel like those, like some of the statistics that Janice just pointed out about, like, you know, Black women being like some of the biggest shoppers right now. Like, yes, we are, right? And so, but the thing is that we also have to hold those accountable to thinking differently. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's sort of what is happening right now. I feel like there's so many corporations that have come out with like these broad, beautiful statements about how they, you know, how they appreciate Black life, and like, you know, how and you know, and I'm gonna be one to say thank you, right? Like, thank you for that. So how does that translate to policy change? How does that translate to the boardroom, what the boardroom looks like? How does that translate to who you're hiring and what they look like, right? And does that continue this conversation of, oh, well, we couldn't fill this position with a person of color because we didn't have enough applicants? Does that conversation still come up? Or does it begin to say, or do people in these positions, right, that are trying to increase people of color within this industry, are they saying now, yes, I have 5 applicants, I have 5 interviews set up today, and they're all white men, right? Are they now saying, wait a minute, stop, I'm not even going to go forward, I'm not even going to do these interviews, like I'm going to start all over again? Like, that's the change that we're looking for. We're looking for deep, radical, like, this is a problem. If we do not fix it right now, it's going to just get deeper and deeper and deeper. Just like, you know, that's why I always ask the question, is it too late? Are we too deeply embedded right now in this, like, in the datafication of our lives to the point to where, as Black people, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah. And it's not to sound like unoptimistic, because I hope we're not, right? But I definitely feel like this is the time where we need to hold these corporations accountable to real, true, radical change.
Mimi, I love that you're so open about the concern about being too late. I think that a lot of people have that concern. That's definitely something that might crossed my mind at like 2 in the morning in the middle of coding something for the mentor method. But so there are two things that encourage me when I get into that headspace. One, we're seeing a shift in terms of who has the buying power, which means that we're seeing a shift in power, right? So as we see more millennials and post-millennials, statistics show that both generations like to support businesses with strong connections to their values and social impact in some way. They're also evaluating companies' corporate like team pages, right? If you see a team that doesn't look as beautiful as this sort of gallery view of this panel, now employers are recognizing that that's actually a disadvantage. And because of that shift in the old guard, I think that it can only get better as those that were from a certain generation or a certain mindset, and not everybody, obviously, there are allies in every generation and we're grateful for them, but the majority of stakeholders who implemented that bias in the first place are now leaving the systems that they kind of blew up, and we're now in a position where we have the energy, we have the buying power, and we have the bandwidth to start course correcting that. I don't know if we'll see it in our time, but I think that we're fighting the good fight at least, so that it's easier for, you know, our like 5th grade grandchildren to be able to have the equity that we're all fighting for. I do think though, on that note, so I'm first generation American from the Congo. My parents immigrated in the 70s through college scholarships from missionaries. And I recognize that I'm the first generation of Black women in my family to have freedom of choice, like full freedom of choice, not needing to subscribe to oppressive values in order to be able to actually achieve my dreams, right? But that took hundreds of years and several women taking incremental steps for me to be able to take this step and be able to do that. So I think that every step that we're taking now is beneficial and will actually create that tidal wave of change. Lastly, I just think that money talks, right? When you're looking at employers, especially in that corporate structure, having, what I've seen go well is when you connect diversity and inclusion incentives and data to shareholders and key stakeholders, bonuses, salaries, raises, promotions, praising those that actually are inclusive leaders, ignoring those that aren't, so that they actually do want that same level of shine. I wish altruism would solve all problems, but when you're connecting it to somebody's personal well-being, that motivates them to take the data seriously and actually level up their own initiatives. And unfortunately, it's not the best reason, but at least they're doing something, and at least we can benefit from those sanctions or incentives being put in place.
Oh man, you got me wanting to say so much, Janice. That was beautiful.
Well, then
what
say
you
it,
just
Michael. Get out there. Say it. What's on your mind?
So a couple things. The first thing that I would say is this comment about being too late, right? You kind of said what I was going to say, is that, you know, the work that we are doing is laying the groundwork for the next person behind us, right? So we wouldn't be here today without Malcolm X, without Martin Luther King, wouldn't be here today without overall slavery, right? We still wouldn't be here today, right? So whatever happened in the past has been building blocks to what's coming in the future. And similar to your point, right now, we are definitely seeing a change in our ecosystem where the power is shifting a little bit. I'm not going to say as much in the economic sense. You know, there's definitely a long way to go in the economic sense, but definitely in the social sense is where I think I see the biggest uptick, because the community is now speaking out, right? We're seeing protests, we're seeing people being active, we're pushing things forward. So I definitely see the social piece of it. What I'm hopeful for is that by leveraging data, right? If we know that if you are more civically engaged, right? If you are more civically engaged, if you're more committed, you will be invested in what the outcome is. You'll start to actually care about what's going on in your community. You will actually care about what's going on in politics because you're actually invested. But we have allowed politics to kind of, we've allowed ourselves to get so mundane in the day-to-day that we haven't thought about other aspects of our lives, which shows, hey, you know, hey, everybody, you know, we do need to vote. We do need to be involved in a political arena. We do need to be involved in our community, but then we also need to be involved economically and having the financial stability to do those other things. So when you mentioned having freedom of choice, I could definitely relate to you on that because I'm also first generation. You know, my whole family was born in Jamaica. So I was born in Miami first with my family as well. And when I think about my mom, I think about my dad who worked, several jobs while I was growing up. But then I look at myself and, my other friends and colleagues is saying, oh, this society was created a very specific way that has not allowed everyone to get ahead. And if you do not tap into multiple networks, if you do not tap into multiple opportunities, then you are most likely going to be left behind. And now when we talk about, well, how can we use data and technology to create other solutions, right? That's where I think about, oh, there's investing, there's trading, there's coding, there's education, which I'm saying is just learning online. There are so many other ways that we can generate not just more income, but we can begin to create other ways of influence. And I think that is the biggest thing that we need to do in our society, is that we need to realize that it's not just economics, it's not just political, no, it's political, economic, and social. And putting those three collectively, we can have a long-lasting change by holding those people accountable. So if you are a politician and you say you're going to do these things, okay, well, now we have the data to back it up. That's saying if you do not do these things, we know what the outcome is going to be based on these trends. So are we going to let these trends happen, or are we going to actually hold these individuals accountable and move the conversation forward? I love talking to tech companies that say that they want to do diversity, equity, inclusion, but they have not changed the recruiting practices at all. Like they do the same exact thing they've been doing for years, and they believe that is going to have an impact, that's going to have a difference. And it's like saying, no, time out. You signed this petition, or you signed this pledge, or you signed some document saying you're going to do these things. Well, now I'm here to hold you accountable to do those things. And if you do not do those things, no problem. I got social media. I got my partners. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that you did not say or you did not do what it is that you're going to say to do. So I'm at a point right now where I'm leveraging the data to tell the story, right? So I love how y'all said that about using data to tell the story, but then also using data to hold people accountable to invest in new technologies, to invest in new ways of creating the change that we want to see. Where now, and I'm gonna throw a shameless plug for Autumn here, now we're having a conversation with the city about moving internet access as a public utility. Now we're having a conversation about, okay, well, we can't do a public utility. What does a private-public partnership really look like? Okay, we can't do that. Well, what does 5G look like? Can we tap into 5G? Is that even really liable for Austin? So we're exploring all three from an internet standpoint, because if you have more access to the internet, well, now you have more ways of generating income. On the flip side of that is we need to create a virtual school. We need to eliminate this brick and mortar ideology of what a school is and go back to just training people, giving people the skills, the information, the know-how to go be successful. So if you want to be a business owner, you could do that. If you want to build a product, you could do that. If you want to offer a service, you could do that, because now we are giving you the skills and we're going back to our roots. And what I like about this idea of giving people skills, that goes back to a cultural exchange. So Mimi, you were saying, is it too late? And I would say that as we engage with other people who don't think the same way we do, we'll have a natural conversion of cultures and ideologies. This goes back in the day in Africa, when you would go from one country all the way to another with your blankets, with your silks, with your medicines that they never heard about. They're like, oh, what's that? Let me buy that, because I've never witnessed that before. And by that bartering exchange, you took something from that culture, went back to where you're from, and now you share that information. So I see, as we continue to have these conversations, hold those people accountable that say that they say they want to do it, but they actually haven't done it yet. Naturally, we will begin to see a change over time, moving from one side of the spectrum to the other, but we have to be consistent. That, I think, is what has dropped the ball, because I feel like we're kind of in the same place where we were back in the 1960s when they had the civil rights movement, right? Like, I feel like we're still back there because we got comfortable. And what I mean by that is that we were happy with some of us getting ahead, right? We were happy with, oh, I made it out the hood, so now I'm fine. I don't have to worry about my fellow neighbors. That's not family, right? That's not community. That's capitalist mentality. That's, oh, I'm by myself. And one of the reasons why, even though I loved Oracle, I loved my time at Oracle, I really did. One thing I did not like about Oracle was the competitive nature that divided my teammates against me. And it's like, wait a minute, like, why are we fighting for the same deal if we're supposed to be collectively working to make the best interest for the end user, for the customer? But that's not what we've been taught. That's not what that's not what we have learned over the years, which I believe has been another challenge and a barrier to just further divide us amongst ourselves and not allow us to actually see, hey, you are just like me, right? You want to see your family be successful. You want to have a house over your head. You want to have food in your tummy, right? All of these things we want the same for everyone, but we haven't been able to focus on our similarities and instead focus so much on our differences. And we've seen that based on the incarceration rates. We've seen that by the homeless rates, right? Who those people are. And those have been more and more reasons to just further that divide. But I do have hope that the work that we're doing here and the work that's being done around the world could move in that direction.
Michael, I want to touch on a point you made about incremental change and also skills development. Going back to my origin story, my grandmother on my dad's side couldn't read or write. And she made sure that all of her children, I think 6 of her children, were able to get an education in the middle of Kinshasa, the Congo, so that she didn't know that, 2 of the 6 would come to America and 1 would become a nurse and the other one would end up working in IT at the Pentagon, which was my father. But because she was so bullish about making sure that they had transferable skills, even something as small as understanding like math, reading, and writing, but continuing to expand and promote the importance of education, here I am, right? So when I think about the timing, if it's too late or not, she could have easily said, well, I guess my family's just going to stay here. We can just teach them how to, make maputa on the side of the road and sell cassava oil and all these other things. But instead, she made sure that they would incrementally refine themselves, which then paved the way for me to be here. So I'm glad you brought that up. I also think about, again, going back to the buy-in, right? If it's almost like a new fitness routine, right? Like people get all excited. I think earlier in COVID, everybody was like making banana bread and working out, right? But if you didn't have an actual connection to why you were going on this fitness train, if you didn't understand maybe why you were emotionally eating or why you were picking unhealthy foods or not resting or drinking too much or whatever it was, more likely than not, you're going to go back to those same habits because you've seen the results momentarily and you're like, okay, it's enough. I can quit. So I think it goes back to making sure that there's that bigger why and internal incentive that goes beyond just a P&L statement or beyond the business and actually into the personal lives and well-being of our non-diverse stakeholders.
I do want to add one point from what Michael mentioned, in the sense that he mentioned a lot about how we need to hold a lot of the employers, a lot of the investors, a lot of the decision makers accountable for their action and for what they're saying. I think that is very important, but I also think we need to hold ourselves accountable in the sense that we looked earlier the number of high school, college graduates. We looked, how many people actually eventually graduate from college. And, there are a lot of organizations out there today. One of them is Code to College. They are going to be one on the panel in the next event. And that organization definitely touched my heart because they go to high school and they teach students how to code from a very young age. And if you see why a lot of the whites and the Asians have a better rate or higher salaries, it's because they're in the STEM, right? They're in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics industry. And if we can encourage more and more people to go through that route, right, then we eventually get at better positions, at better higher standards of living as Africans and Hispanics. when I'm looking on the other end for employers and investors and decision makers, and when they have and holding themselves accountable, I have been on both ends. And I've realized that a lot of companies say that they want to see change within the organization, but you see very little actions. I'll take employment, for example. You know, they will say, yes, we want to employ more Black people, but they still, again, they keep the same routine like you mentioned earlier. One advice I want to tell them is, you know, go to the diversity organization. There are several organizations now that are creating recruiting platforms specifically for Blacks, specifically for minorities. And, you know, don't just say you want Blacks and minorities, actually reach out to them, reach out to those different organizations. And when you do employ them, right, go to organizations like the Method Mentor, because, right, I've realized that even though Blacks and minorities do enter the tech industry, a lot of them leave early on because the culture within the industry is not very pleasant. And I have experienced it firsthand. And we want to make sure that, you know, we keep a culture that is convenient for everybody and every background.
So then I'll ask one more question, as I know we're approaching time here. So overall, just based on, you know, everybody here has different areas of expertise and focal points, but what are some things that our audiences, our attendees could do in their respective companies to really push this conversation forward around leveraging data and technology to produce a better outcome for those that are most in need?
I mean, I would probably contribute two things to that, and then really just, you know, provide that space for my sisters who are in, you know, Black women in tech. So a couple of things, right? The first one is really thinking about how philanthropy can truly support this new normal that we're seeking, right? Like, how are we, even in our jobs, if you're at Google, or if you're an IBM, or if you're, you know, you have the ability to support Black and Brown led organizations, right? That are truly the ones that are on the ground, like Autumn, that are, you know, working to increase that pipeline, right, of people of color entering these positions, right, in the tech space. It's not with, it's only going to be when we are invited in, when we're sustained in, right? Because we can be invited, but there's so many microaggressions and, you know, other things fighting against, you know, our ability to continue in that work sometimes, even if it's, you know, just not feeling welcome. You know, it's organizations like yours, Michael, like organizations like yours, Janice, like that provide this opportunity for change, right? But it means that philanthropy needs to support them. And so I think that's number one, is really just like, if you're at a business that has a company giving program, like, give to these Black and Brown led organizations within your city. It's simple as that. And a lot of times they have like matching programs so that you can, you know, be a part of the change. I think that's number one. And then number two is really, you know, encouraging the youth, right, around this idea that they are so super duper powerful, like, and that, you know, math is their friend. And so you guys had mentioned Matt Stevenson's Code to College. You had, I didn't hear too much about E4 Youth, but that's another fabulous organization that is doing some phenomenal things when it comes to encouraging, you know, youth to kind of get into these fields. I know at Measure, we're just, you know, we have a program called the Travis County Girl Squad, where we realized that a lot of our kids, you know, don't even have access to even get on the computer to even explore these ideas, right? And so we're providing computers to our girls. And so I think that it's really about providing that access, opening the doors, being welcome in, and then also, I'm sorry, we have to hold these folks accountable to real systemic change. When I talk about, is it too late? What I'm really talking about is that you know, the web, it's so deep. So when you go and Google Black boys, you're going to mostly get negative stuff, right? It's going to take people like us, data activists like us. It's going to take the change and who's being hired to really undo the system. And that's, to me, I feel like it's unfortunate that it's gotten to this point, right? To whereas now we have to go do yet another system, undo yet another system. We already have to undo the employment institution. We already have to undo racism within the education system. We already have to undo racism within the criminal justice system. Now we have to undo racism within the technological system. So that's when I say, is it too late? And I'm super duper optimistic. Obviously, I mean, I'm a Black woman that, you know, has a data-driven nonprofit. So I work to do that. However, I know that it is not, we can't do it alone. That's, in my mind, it just cannot happen like that. So be a true ally, be a true co-conspirator, really work to see this system disrupted, undone, and support those people that are doing the work to do that, to keep going.
That is a great point to segue into our Q&A. I want to stop with Mimi's point right there. I want everybody to remember that. We're going to go to Q&A. It's really clear we need lots more time to talk about this topic. Haven't gotten to hear nearly enough from all of you. We do have an event in 2 weeks where we'll talk about the topic more. That won't be enough either. So first of all, I've been chatting with my team and colleagues on the side. I really want to get each of the 4 of you involved in the podcasts and posts that we mentioned. You all have lots of good information and lots to say. And I feel like we can't even begin to do it justice in 45 minutes. When Mimi first started, I felt like, okay, this is a keynote presentation, not a 5-minute opening. So we will come back to all of you to make sure we do this. And I hope you can stay on for the extended Q&A so that we can go on for almost another hour in this. I do want to take a few audience questions though, and we're going to ask Amy Ashley, who helped organize this event and the next one behind the scenes, to do the moderation of Q&A. And I'm going to make an exception that I never make. We always try to end at 7:30. We're not going to try tonight. We're going to focus on the Q&A going until 7:35 and Jessica and I closing it by 7:40. Then we'll give everybody a few minutes to get a drink, bio break, whatever, and we'll do extended Q&A at 7:42 instead of 7:30ish. So I hope that's okay. I just want people to be able to ask you 4 questions. So with that, I am pleased to introduce Amy Ashley of Austin Energy, one of our great advisory board members and a member of one of our great sponsors. Amy, thank you for helping to coordinate these 2 events, and we just got you 10 more minutes. So I hope you'll find some great questions there to ask these great panelists.
Thank you so much. This has been just an incredible session. I want to thank everyone for joining. There's been some wonderful questions that have come up, and what I'm noticing in a common thread that's happening is that people really do want that call to action from these panelists. We really want to know kind of how we can move forward and take this moment, this movement from the moment into a sustainable, offering for, addressing systemic racism, particularly in technology. I will say I'm having a little technology difficulty in that I was able to see the questions originally, and now I can only see a couple. So I'll just start, hoping that Jessica can get me back to where I can see the questions. But I will say, Mimi, we have some questions here for you. It says, Mimi briefly mentioned programs that support Black and Brown youth in tech. Is there a resource that lists these types of programs throughout the country? How do we keep holding ourselves and colleagues accountable? It's so important, like Mimi said.
So honestly, Google can be your friend, right? To find some of these amazing organizations. Just to throw out a couple, Measure. We would love for you guys to be a part of our organization, where we can definitely connect you to several others just within the local area. I love Black Girls Code. Oh my gosh. I mean, again, E4Youth. Code to College. Matter of fact, my son is actually in Code to College right now. And so there's so many incredible ones. You know, I feel like it just really takes the due diligence of you being willing to, and whoever asked that question, thank you, because obviously you are one of those people, and be infectious in it, right? So like, there's, what I've seen happen lately too, is that people within tech companies and tech, like big tech companies, obviously in Austin, are really kind of like bringing together folks within their organization. So there's like a group of Black folks like at IBM that are working together, right? At Indeed, at Big Commerce, and it's just so exciting to get around maybe one of these organizations, adopt an organization that you know is doing really great things that you can continually support. Because another thing that is problematic though, when it comes to supporting some Black and brown organizations, is that people will get excited and provide support for like a project, but they won't provide support provide support for the ongoing operation of the organization. So make sure that when you are being an amazing ally and co-conspirator or providing funding to an organization, that you're really doing it with the intention of sustainability for that organization, so that they can continue to go. And also, you know, some of the older organizations too are for youth are doing some phenomenal things, right? Like Girl Scouts, right? Like they're having this focus too, just like on empowering diversity. And so there's, everywhere you look, you're going to be able to find an amazing organization to support, but being willing to do so is really the first step. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. This one is for Janice. Are mentorship programs most successful when people from similar racial groups are paired, when people from different racial groups are paired, or does it not make a difference?
I think it matters depending on the use case. And I could nerd out about this, so I'll try to find a concise way to discuss mentorship, but I am happy to set up time and discuss this in greater detail, because I think that it's a broader conversation. So if your objective is to increase the number of underrepresented professionals in the pipeline for leadership, it's important to connect them to an underrepresented person within leadership, if that's possible, but then also looking at the majority shareholders of leadership positions, it's important to broaden your network and get somebody from that space as well who can be your sponsor and advocate for you being in that room. So I wouldn't look at it so much as needing somebody from the same race or gender, so much as it is, what skills are you learning to become as indispensable as humanly possible to that organization, that they can't live without you and they need to continue investing in you and developing in you.
Okay, great. So part of the issue of biases in technology is rooted in the data leveraged. What are some of the ways the biases can be reduced in data?
Can I help on that one real quick? Okay. Yes. Love questions like that. And I'm just going to offer something very simple, right? And coming from a place from Measure, think about what qualifies as data. We had this quick conversation just within the panelists, right? So at Measure, we believe that lived experience from people of color should qualify as data. And, you know, a lot of times we just think of like numbers and bars and charts, but we don't really think deeply into the who, the what, and the why. So really removing that bias is really providing the space for people of color to own their own data narratives, to be able to provide analysis about the data that was collected, to create their own surveys, right? To understand like what that survey methodology is, to be, and as that data is coming in, for them to be able to see it, right? A lot of times what ends up happening, especially in corporate America, is that we push out these different surveys that are created just within this small group at the top, right? And it's totally not inclusive. So at our organization, that's something that we've been thinking very, very meaningfully about. We've actually innovated 3 tools to really help recreate and reimagine the way that we create surveys, create key performance indicators, do evaluations. And so these are these ways that we can combat bias is by putting it in the hands of the people that are actually living the experience.
What does the panel view as the role of higher education in providing skills needed to facilitate more participation, particularly in engineering disciplines, important? If so, what needs to be done differently by all involved?
Sure, I'll chime in on this one for a little bit. And I commented in the Q&A for y'all as well. But higher ed, in my opinion, should be developing talent for the workforce, but also preparing individuals to live in our society, right? There are so many other life skills that we don't actually learn in K-12 or college that puts individuals at a disadvantage. And when you combine that with individuals not learning the right skills for the jobs that are out, there's a huge disconnect. Here in Austin, we graduate about 1,500 tech graduates, but we've created over 3,000 tech jobs since 2009. So we've created double the amount of tech graduates that we are graduating to UT Austin, ACC, which is Austin Community College, Concordia, and St. Edwards. 4 universities only producing roughly about 1,500 despite twice as many jobs being created. So when we think about that, the question is why? Well, in technology specifically, technology is too fast to accommodate our education system. And our education system is tied financially, it's tied politically. So there's only so much our public institutions can do to really adjust for the constant change and evolution in our tech space. So I believe that higher ed really should be more in line with our overall workforce, the direction of companies, the direction of our society, which means they need to change their funding mechanism. They need to change the flexibility that they have to do what's best in line for the students versus what's best in line for their funders. So that's what needs to be changed from a policy perspective to really provide what is the best decision for the individual that is going through the higher ed institution. So without that, we really won't be able to provide the right opportunities. And mind you, I'm just talking about the tech industry, so there's definitely other industries out there. When we think about technology specifically, the real change, the real push is around the skills, on-the-job training, giving these individuals what they really should be doing in our education system and what they used to do in our education system many moons ago. I don't know the year, so don't quote me on that. However, apprenticeships, on-the-job training, trades, those all used to be very, very important. There was a shift in our society when we didn't focus on those skilled trades anymore, and instead we focused more so on degrees. And by doing so, we just created a divide within our society as we see today.
Great, thank you, Michael. Jay, do we have time for a couple more? Yes.
We have time for one more question, and then remember, extended Q&A after that. So one more during this.
Great, thank you. This has been so insightful. Thank you, everyone. Let's throw this one to Eunice. And you know, we're the Austin Forum, and we're so excited to be going national and global, especially in these virtual events. But let's talk a little bit about Austin. I am a young Black entrepreneur from Kentucky. What value does Austin bring to someone like me that San Francisco or New York does not?
That's a great question. I think as a Black entrepreneur, Austin definitely embraced the diversity that a lot of the big giants and startups in San Francisco and the Bay Area does not. When I moved to Austin and started my tech startup, I think what really got me to where I am today is how much the community around me in Austin and how people were willing to bring you in, you know, provide help. There was a huge community around you know, giving you feedback. There were mentors, there were people willing to help and see you grow as a person. So for anybody interested in either choosing Austin to grow your startup or the Bay Area, I would say Austin hands down. And I'll probably ask even Janice as another entrepreneur here, she can probably testify to how amazing the community, the tech startup community in Austin is.
I 100% agree with that. I think that there's an openness to learning and understanding that isn't in other cities, especially looking at the Bay Area. I think the Bay Area is saturated with brilliant jerks, and that's kind of the culture that they've absorbed, where, you know, being the loudest person in the room, having no sort of respect for the well-being of others, and just doing everything humanly possible to accomplish your goal, whether or not it's morally acceptable or not, is praised in certain circles in the Valley in San Francisco. Whereas here in Austin, that's a fireable offense. Whether you're corporate or a founder or just here for a moment, I think Austin values being a good person first, and then also being a gifted founder like Eunice and I second. And I think that's a big differentiator. I know the mentors that I've met here, the funding that we've received, the opportunities that have been open to us because of being here in Austin, we grew at an exponentially faster rate than we would have in a different city. So very grateful for Austin for that.
And just to also follow up with that, because you're going to hear, like, if you're going to hear two sides of the coin, right? You're going to hear that Black people are leaving Austin and all of this, right? And where are the Black folks? And, you know, you're going to hear a lot of that, which is true. I mean, the data does support that. The thing is, though, is that there's so much incredible opportunity about being in Austin, about being in the capital, right? Like there's what happens here literally has the capability to change the world, to reverberate across Texas, right? What happened right here. And when these ladies are talking about the support system, especially, you know, in tech, it is there. Like, it's literally there. And if you can't find it, call me, like literally. And I will connect you to who you need to talk to. But the thing is that it's all about, you know, Austin is new, it's fresh. It takes a lot from you to be real. Like, it takes a lot, right? Because we're booming and we're growing. And so you have to be prepared for that self, you know, for that to show up strong and ready to go, because we do move fast here. But there is such an amazing community of people that are willing to come together and support one another like I have never seen before, which is the most incredible. It has been the most incredible journey, at least I know for myself, in building startups and building nonprofits and building just my own community. So it's a beautiful place to be. Now I love California. I'm a California girl, you know. Sometimes coming to Austin, I have to say, yes, I'm one of those ones that came from California. But I definitely, I love this place, and I've adopted it as my own home.
So I'll comment here for 2 seconds, and all I would say is this. I never thought I would ever be in Texas, but I'm here for at least minimum 10 more years. So I'm gonna say that I've never been to Texas. You know, I've been from East Coast, Miami, up to New York, West Coast, California, Vegas, yes, nowhere in between. But I'm here, and I'm here for the long haul, because you definitely find a good group of individuals that really want you to be successful as you find them. So yeah, so that's the comments or the 2 cents I'll add to that.
All right, on that note, we're gonna end the formal Q&A. And besides, you guys set me up so well. I was gonna say, if only there were an organization that talked about that startup culture in Austin that everybody here should learn from. You already just heard it all from Mimi and Janice and Michael and Eunice, but we have an event on that on September 1st. So I hope you'll come back to the Austin Forum on September 1st for our event on startups and innovation and the role that Austin plays in that. But before that, please join us on August 18th for the second part of our August topics on racial justice, discrimination, equity, equality. This one is going to be also about racial equity, but it's going to be about in tech, what the companies can do, not just what the technologies can do, but what the companies can do to support that. So please join us then. Join us on September 1st for Tech Startups and Innovation. We have a fun event on September 22nd on online worlds and gaming systems and the virtual environments that can be created. We're going to cover smart cities on October 6th. We've got a brand new topic that we're planning possibly for October 20th on neurotech and brain enhancement. So tech and neuroscience for that day. Quantum computing, one of the craziest technologies of all, is the topic for the November event. And then, as always in December, Tech for Social Good, the event that I really got to meet Mimi at last year. We're covering that topic again this December because it's the holiday month, the feel good month, et cetera. So we hope you'll join us for those events. But again, please join us in 2 weeks when we come back to this topic, but for a different angle. What you and your technology companies and organizations can do culturally. Several of you mentioned Code to College in the chat window, so I was very happy to be able to show this slide that Matt Stevenson from Code to College is one of the participants in the next event. So we hope you'll join us for that as well.
And please, like I mentioned, please join our Awesome Forum Slack workspace. You can just get in from going to our website, join the Slack channel, and you'll be able to join. We'd love to continue the conversation. I saw a lot of people with referencing a lot of great opportunities, looking for mentorship, looking for opportunities, looking to share. So please join the Slack channel and continue the conversation. And again, many, many thank you to our annual partners who make all of this possible. These are wonderful companies that are really committed to bringing people together around technology and its impact on society. So we're incredibly thankful to our annual partners.
One of the things that we do to try to help is collect devices. We partner with the Austin Pathways project of the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. In 2018 and 2019, across those 2 years, we collected over 250 devices through the Austin Forum to repurpose to families in need of those devices. So we greatly, with this pandemic, has made it even clearer that this digital divide is a real problem for people who don't have access to information, whose kids don't have the devices they need to access school materials. So Austin Pathways has set up a very safe way for you to donate your device. So we hope you'll consider doing it. They will give you a tax write-off for it. They're a 501c3. So instead of going to Craigslist, please donate your device. They'll even pick it up for you. They wipe it clean, refurbish it, and they repurpose it to people who need it. So if it's sitting in a drawer somewhere, not being used, please give it to somebody. There are people who need it. Again, please follow us on social media. You really are our marketing effort. So we thank you for that. We thank you for the great turnouts at our events. We thank you for sharing these events. And we hope you'll continue to follow us, provide comments, and share the events.
Oh, so we'd love to hear, what are you looking forward to this week? Actually, this is what I want to hear. What is something you've learned? What is something that's been useful about this panel tonight? What was something to discuss that you could apply? So you can be what you look forward to, but what's something you learned? What's something that's useful? What's something that's inspired you? So put that in the chat feature right now. We've seen a lot of thank yous from people, but I would love to see anything that you've learned, put it in the chat panel. And we're going to, I had no idea that accounting had its roots in Africa. Awesome, thanks for sharing, Vivian. Continue sharing too. So we're gonna continue the evening to make up for our missing of time at Trifecta. Please grab a drink, come back, and we're gonna have a live Q&A. I already put it in the chat panel. So if you had a question that you put in Q&A that didn't get answered, please put it on the chat panel. Please put it into chat and we'll pull you on and give you an opportunity to talk with our panelists right now.
So we'll be back in about 60 seconds. If any of the speakers can stay on, we encourage you to. I know not all of you can, but hope that you will. And we'll be back in about 60 seconds.
Ooh.
That was
Thanks,
fantastic.
Ashley, for sharing.
Michael, thank you so much for thinking of me. This was a lot of fun. I unfortunately have to drop. My deliverables will not do themselves, so I have to address a few things, but thank you so much. This was wonderful. And Mimi, it was so nice to meet you. Eunice, good to see you again. It's been ages.
I know. It's seeing you as well.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but thank you so much, and I hope the rest of the evening goes well.
Thank you.
Janice.
Nice to meet you, Janice.
Hi, Janice.
I'll definitely have to connect with you on another space. But
Yeah, let's do that. I would love to.
So I just text y'all too, just so y'all know.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So there you go. Y'all got numbers. There y'all go.
Ultimate connector right there. Good work, Michael.
All right.
I know that we've
I'm
seen a lot of great.
I'm actually gonna leave off too, Jessica. I'm sorry. I'm super preggo and my kid is here. And
Congratulations.
I'm hungry. Thank you.
Understandable. Take care. Congratulations too, by the way, Mimi. I saw that on the social. So.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate that. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful night.
Bye.
Well, Eunice and Michael, that means we're keeping you. So this is also Jay's favorite part too of the evening. So people, we still have, 30 plus people around. So for there was a few that I might see if they're still on because they were asking some good questions. So again, everybody, if you asked a question and it didn't get answered, this is now your opportunity to get to chat with our panelists. So please put your question or comment, or if you have anything that you want to share into the chat panel, and we'll pull you on up. So feel free to get a drink like Jay did. What did Jay get to drink?
I got a little dessert drink tonight instead of the usual whiskey. A little Bailey's.
Ah, nice. Very lovely. I wanted to see, there was one person, I wonder if she's still on, if Donna's still on, because she is doing she's a professor at a university. So Donna, I wanted to bring her on while we wait for other questions, because she had posted something earlier that I thought would make for interesting discussion. Donna, can you hear us? Are you still on the line? I just promoted our panelist without actually asking her, so it's possible she's stepped away. Oh, you can hear. You want to take yourself off mute? Because I know that you shared that you were writing course, I lost it. Oh, that you're a professor focusing on critical race theory and curriculum for equity, and wanting to have the students use data to map equity and transform the educational environment. So if you'd like to chat with Michael or Eunice, please, I thought.
Hi, nice
I bring you up to chat.
I'm here. Yeah, so we have been really moving our curriculum to focus on equity for a few years now, and it's obviously very timely at the moment. But our teachers, I think, and our educators and curriculum leaders really do need to use data to sort of map their communities and really understand who is in their communities and who they're teaching. So I had thought, as I'm putting this new course together, which is called Curriculum for Equity, that it would be a really good exercise for them to map their communities. And it's been a really long time since I've done anything with GIS or figuring out how it is that they could engage in something like that to get some visual data, and if you had any recommendations on how to do that. And I guess associated with that, when you talked about, data can be biased, which obviously is an issue in research, or what readings or what materials might be good for them to more readily see that bias.
I could probably answer.
So this will be open. Yeah, Eunice.
I'm not so sure about the first one, some other resources, but I definitely think that a lot of the data that we have out there can be biased, and if the data is biased, then the system is biased. One of the things that I like to look, and I think it has its advantages and its disadvantages, is really just, when we think about just racial climate, is protected classes. And I did mention a little bit about it during our panel, in the sense that when when you go online and you fill out an application and you're being asked, what is your race, what national origin are you from, and all these data points, because of the way the system is already being portrayed, it can be biased against a certain kind of people, either by disabilities, by age, or by race. But it can also be an advantage to you. I know in the educational system, we did see earlier that Asians are the ones that are really up there in terms of salary and educational level. And I think that if we didn't, when you apply for university, I think because there's so many discussions today around how to create a more diverse community in the educational system, if those protected classes was not part of the data, then maybe only Asians and whites will be able to enter, really good universities. So in the conversation that we're having right now, and we're thinking about data, I think, like protected classes are one of the things that really affect how a lot of the systems that we build around data, our algorithms, is around those protected classes. And I'm not really sure the way to fix it moving forward, but I think that is one of the big aspects we need to think about, how to improve that. Michael, do you have a different opinion?
No, not necessarily a different opinion. I'll just add, as far as best practices. So on the GIS system, I am not sure around that. What I would say is to reach out to organizations that are using the product or the application the way that you kind of want to do it on your end, and kind of reach out to them for best practices. That's what I would say around that. And then similarly, when you're thinking around, okay, what can I do to ensure that the data that we're collecting is actually in line with the outcome that you're looking to have, is reach out to those individuals that have the data sets and don't reinvent the wheel. I would leverage their data to ensure that the data that you're putting together kind of coincides. And if there is a disconnect or a discrepancy, then dive deeper into that. Maybe that's a place you want to go dive deeper into to make sure that the data sets itself is not being biased, and move around in that direction. That would just really be my recommendation, to really plug into those organizations and individuals that are already doing it the way that you want to do it, and then see if that aligns with the direction that you're looking to move forward with.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks. And I think sort of one of the skills that we develop, because we can never really get away from biased anything. So nothing's ever neutral, correct? So I think, Eunice, what you had mentioned is this idea of just understanding and being critically conscious about how the data is arranged and what historical factors actually lead to that arrangement. And then to understand that that's always going to be visible. And so how can you be conscious of it to then read it differently than unconsciously reading it in a biased and sort of institutionally racialized way that has been, sort of conditioned into our society.
Could you repeat exactly what?
Repeat which?
I think we're having a little audio video issue here. Michael, what were you asking her to repeat? Michael, I think you're on mute. Yep, you're on mute. And Jessica,
I'm on mute too. It's, yeah, something with his phone dropped though, because he's called in. He's not on his computer. He's on two lines.
Hello, can you hear me?
There.
Oh, okay, everybody, one second.
Yeah.
That sounds good, Michael. And Donna, you're a little bit far from your microphone too, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Donna, can you repeat that question for Michael?
Yeah, I'm just not sure which question he wants me to repeat.
Oh, I was just asking what's the data set that you're looking to collect?
Oh, I don't think that I have one in particular in mind. It's just, so, I mean, the university's in North Carolina, so most of our students are in North Carolina. So we have a very sort of diverse terrain there with Native American, Black history, and, incoming immigrants from Central America. And so a lot of times, people will just consider equity and diversity as something that is a blanket term, where it's really diverse depending on what the history is of the students that are in your classroom. And so rather than walking in with an assumption of this is who my population is, I would like the data to sort of illustrate for them, who's there, what is their access, and particularly now, since a lot of teachers are teaching online and a lot of families will not be sending their kids back to school. And if you look at a map of North Carolina, there are so many regions that are just Black in terms of no access to internet. So there's just blackout areas. So I want them to understand rather than just sort of assume that they're understanding diversity because of these global conversations, that the data can sort of help them illuminate what the real situation is. You all had the number of students that are going on to school, and sort of other data that really helps inform their decisions about how they teach. So it really depends on their particular questions.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah. So with that, what I would just say is that number one, I went to school at UNC, so I'm a Tar Heel, so North Carolina all day. And what I would say is that by that approach, by not leading with an assumption, I think you'll more so ask the question about like why. I think will allow, or at least limit, the amount of biases in that data set as you move forward.
Okay, great.
I want to make sure, if it's okay, I'm going to jump in because I know that we had at least a few other people who want to get an opportunity to dialogue too. But Donna, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. I know you're in Austin, but being a professor and joining us, we super appreciate it. And thank you. I'm going to bring up, we just had Tiana also share a question and wanting to talk with you guys about it. And I will let Tiana share. Hold on. Letting Tiana join as a panelist. Hold on. And there's Tiana. Tiana, we got you on if you want to take yourself off mute and share the question that you were that you put in the chat. And I know they would love to give you some feedback and some ideas.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. I really enjoyed the conversation. So I guess I wanted to give context to my question, considering right now how a lot of like alumni of high schools have been like writing open letters to their schools about changing their policies and making their curriculum more anti-racist. I'm doing that with a couple alumni at my old high school. And when I had a talk with the administration, I was asking about how they collect data about like their disciplinary procedures and how they hold those reports. And they basically said that they really don't, especially for like lower offenses like dress coding, which I guess with Measure, I wrote a lot of through their work about how there's a lot of racial bias when it comes to dress codes in general. But I guess I wanted to hear from you guys, how could I maybe go about starting up that system for them? Because they also seem very ill-equipped to deal with it. So it kind of reminded me of what you guys talked about, how you're approaching companies and asking them to change, but they're like really hesitant or they don't really know what they should be doing. So yeah, I don't know if you have any ideas or ways to address what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I got a couple of things for you there. So these are my recommendations. The first is you can start a petition, and that's one thing that you could do. You could get signatures, and you could really galvanize the Parent-Teacher Association. I'm assuming they have one. There's other organizations like groups that kind of fall within the school system that is not paid by the school. So I would tap into those other areas because they'll be the ones more likely to invest in what you're doing since their students are the ones that are being most impacted. So those are the things that I would say for that. The other piece that I would say is to create a process. So put together a proposal. What will be step 1, step 2, step 3. So step 1 could be, we're going to start documenting what the infraction is or what the accusation of this individual. Let's start tracking those, writing those down. And then as you do that, now you have a data set. So you'll begin to collect the data around what the issues are for these individuals or kind of what the accusations are and then why they're being punished and based on or the consequences of their actions based on who they are, what grade level, based on other demographics. So as you provide or say, hey, we're going to start collecting this information, here goes the one-pager or infographic or documentation supporting that. Once you give someone something tangible, well, now you could refer back to it and hold them accountable with that. So my recommendation would be to begin the process, reach out to those organizations, start a petition if you want to, start collecting signatures and see who will support you on your effort.
I think that was a great answer. I don't have much to add.
Yeah, well, I guess also shout out to Michael because I was the Howard student who my parents are also Jamaican, so, and I grew up in Miramar, so that's cool.
There it is, love it, love it.
And well, I guess I also maybe had a connection that with Eunice, so I know that you're really into like open source, which is super cool because that's basically how maybe I would want to do like coding or making projects like for myself or for like social change, I guess. So I guess it's connected to the collection of data and maybe even making a program for them to use. So do you have tips about like once Michael said, like getting the data set up and holding them accountable, how you can maybe say like using technology to analyze it?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of open source resources out there when it comes to either visualization of data or analytics that does not necessarily require you to code. And it really depends on what you're trying to do. I think, if you're like, visualization, like open source visualization tools, and you Google that, you'll find a huge ton of resources that could potentially be beneficial to you, and that might be easy for you to use. But there are definitely a lot of, not just the tools, but also the community around. The big and I would say most important thing about open source software is the community around it. So when you do have questions, there are always going to be people to help you figure things out when you're using open source tools to build whatever technology you're interested in building with that data points.
Yeah, great. I really just appreciate both of the responses you gave. And I guess that's a really good way to go forward because something I've been kind of running into is like once you present like the action items list and like talk to them, like what happens after that and like how to keep the momentum up. So yeah, those are both like really great responses. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
The last thing that I'll just say is be consistent. Whatever you do, be consistent. That's it.
Great.
Awesome.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Tiana.
Jess, do you have any more questions in the chat? I've got a bunch in my window, bunch of comments. I can't see any more questions though.
There's definitely, we've had a very active chat, but I think that was the last person who asked the question who's on. I think there were some of the people that I've tried to ping.
I see a lot of chat comments.
That was great.
Yeah, I see a lot of chat comments about how my alma mater beat Michael's alma mater in football and basketball the last 2 years, but I think those are mine now. I don't think those are questions, actually.
I don't think I see those at all, amazingly.
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. It's after 8 o'clock, so we're gonna let you go. Any final questions from anybody before we do? Final comments
Yeah,
from the
anything-
speakers? Michael, final comments?
Drink plenty of water and get plenty of rest.
Eunice, you want to close it out for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think any one thing that is, to my heart, and when this topic comes around is, we can only be the change that we want to see in this world. And I'm a high believer of, us as Black people, if we want to see change and hold people accountable, we have to have a seat at the table. So my encouragement to anybody still on the line is, be that lead engineer, be that startup founder, be that woman investor, and have a seat at the table, because as much as we want to hold people accountable, when there's nobody in the room representing us, those decisions can be hard to be made, no matter how much data we have around, what is happening in the world.
That's great final comments. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Michael and Eunice and our prior speakers. Thanks to the attendees. Thanks for holding on till after 8 o'clock. For those of you who did, want everybody to have a great week, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, it's going to be full of specific recommendations about what your companies can do to help in this issue. So we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.